Sick. And mic is turned on. So we are not muted today.
Yes.
Awesome.
Hey,
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 3D Leadership Podcast. The focus of this podcast is very simple. We discuss leadership principles found in the Bible, practical application of those principles, and at the end of the day, we just want to give you simple principles to apply to your life and hopefully walk towards the calling that God's given you. If you don't co-sign the Christian faith, the goal is simply to make sure that you are still being added value to and are able to move forward in life toward who you are trying to become as an individual. But it's an exciting day today because we've got our whole crew back, so that's super exciting. We've got Laura back in town from I don't even know where all you've been at this point. LA, Texas. Where all did you go throughout the summer here?
Turkey, Greece, New York. We were everywhere.
Yeah. So in other words, they just weren't home is the best way to put it.
Yes.
So we were back, and she's, for those of you who don't know, her and her husband run the nonprofit Epic and Next Gen CEO, which is a partner of the podcast. And we've got a very special guest today that I'm excited to share with y'all. Our friend Josser is in town today, not in town, but come to town now from Miami to help oversee the youth at Cross Assembly, which is going to be exciting. So Josser, just take us in and give us a little bit of background of who you are, like what made you come here, and we'll get things going.
Well, to start first off, what got me here was God. I did not want to come to North Carolina, but God was just shifting me to a new season, and I come from Miami, as Dennis was saying. Practically born and raised over there. I was a youth pastor. I planted a church over there and worked in one of the biggest churches in Miami. And then God was just taking me to a new season, and God was telling me that, hey, it's time for your season at Miami is going to be over soon. And I was just expecting of what God was going to do, and here I am in North Carolina. Yeah. Or what do you guys call it? You guys call it something different. What is it?
No, we do not call it that.
That's the spark notes of or pretty much of what God has done in the past few years.
Awesome, man. Sweet. So just for basic intros, you've got myself, Dennis, one of the hosts here. We've also got my brother Danny and my brother Dozy here, who have been here since day one, and Laura, as we just mentioned. So the whole idea for today is to discuss, it's a part two of what we call winning mentality, right? So the whole idea is there's a lot of things that happen in life. We know that. There's a lot of obstacles you face. There's a lot of hard days, hard moments. And the goal is for us to ultimately find ways to navigate those and move forward versus get caught up in the mix of it all and just get lost in it. So just to kind of get things started off, like for either one of y'all, where have you seen yourself having to have more of a winner's mentality than or maybe not even winner's mentality, but just a mentality to keep pushing forward? How did you foster that in yourselves over the course of time? We all gonna start easy.
No, it's just the reason why I'm just thinking because I feel like there's so many moments in my life that I'm trying to like, okay, what's the best one? So Danny, you can go first one.
Okay, yeah. There's like those who were saying, there's a lot of moments. I think it's not a one and done. Like, hey, I'm gonna have a winner's mentality and that's it. Because there's gonna be another obstacle that God is gonna try to level you up on. It's gonna be hard and it's not gonna be expected. I love what Jasper was saying, like when we were at a coffee today. He was saying that he will give you a cloudy vision. And the cloudy vision is there and it's his will, because if he gave it to you all at once, you won't need to press in, you won't need to level up, you already know. The thing of not knowing, like Jasper was saying, is the part of faith. And that's the only way we can please God and keep pushing forward, is that little bit of faith. He's going to give you a little bit of vision, a little bit of ambition. And then from there, you're going to choose him to bring him along your journey, and he will make it happen. And it's not going to be like you think. And that's just his way of being like, no, my way is better. One day you're gonna be asking like, why? And another you're gonna be like, okay, I understand. I understand that last season, but this next season is gonna be another part of a different kind of test. A different part of your heart that you're probably not letting go of, and probably not cleansing. as another room, right? There's many rooms that we need to cleanse, and that was just one door, one room. And,
Yeah, I would say for me, to use an example, was my relationship with my now wife. I think we talked about our story previously on this, but mainly we had an issue with our families agreeing for us to be together. And it took some years for us to really get past that and to really to go. But I truly felt that God was calling us to be together. But I would say this, like we broke up twice because, our family was going to war. And I was trying to run from that mindset. And it was weird because God kept telling me, like, no, you pray for a wife. This is your wife. This is the person you're going to be with. And all the signs were there, but I was like, getting like, okay, are you sure? I need some signs. I need you to, God's like, bro, I'm talking to you right now. Yes, I'm sure. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is who you need to be with. And it was miraculous. Like, we just waited because we really want to honor our family and we didn't want to get married without their approval. But one day, my mom was like one of Bailey's parents. They sat down and they talked. They were like, yeah, you know what? Based on what I'm like, yes, we agree. And from there, they started planning a wedding. And for me, considering the years that it took for us to get to that point, when we started dating, I couldn't imagine that circumstance happening when my parents sit down with her parents and actually talk. And it was just, to me, when I think about like how God can really push you through, I mean, our marriage has been better than I thought I could imagine having so far. And
let's go.
yeah, well, it just is. Well, it just is. It's like every marriage has its struggles, obviously, but to be honest, I've always said like a bad day with her is many good days with anybody else in that regard. And I'm grateful for that. So it's given me a lot of confidence to always look back on the Lord because I know what He had to get out of me to be able, get out of us to be able to have a successful marriage so far. And it's kind of like, okay, if He made that work, then I don't have to worry about it. I really don't. I can have faith in knowing that He can really do anything. And so, yeah, that's, when I think about having that winning mentality and like what you said about God can give you a vision through the clouds. You don't necessarily know how you're going to get there, but it's the faith that you just have in Him, knowing that He will lead you to that is what makes it successful. Because, and then the beauty of it is as He continually shows you steps that you trust Him more, your faith grows. So now, when He shows you a little bit, right, and you have faith in that, now He can show you more, and you can do more with that. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the beauty of living a life with Him. It's that happy, that quote unquote winning mentality, not because of you doing anything, but because you know He already did it for you.
Amen. The one who lives in us is greater than the one who lives in the world. And I think that part right there, you're saying that, I think that's what keeps me motivated to keep moving forward because He lives in us. The kingdom of God is in us. And sometimes it's hard to comprehend that because, of course, our flesh is like, no, that doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. Our logic is like, no, it does not make sense. But I think it's that faith that we're like, no, the King of Kings, Kingdom of God lives within us. And because of that, we're going to avail much right in life.
And I think personally, that winning mentality, you could go both ways. You can see it in the world view and you can see it in the Christian view. The world view and the winner mentality is, I got to add, and I'm moving up the scale and I'm going up and I'm going up. But the kingdom of God is upside down. It's sometimes losing. That's the winning mentality. Losing yourself, losing that pride, losing what's causing that stir in your heart, that desire, losing all of that, dying to self is winning mentality. Sometimes God looks at you and it's like, okay, you want that winning mentality? How about give that up to me? And we don't want that because in our nature and in the worldly view, winning mentality is like, I need this, I need that, add on to me, and I'm winning. Yes. And sometimes God is like, no, that you're actually losing by adding all of that to your life because you're losing your first love, you're losing the purpose that I have given you, so you're actually not winning at all. You're not in that winning mentality. I need to take that off, and it's come to me. For example, myself in my life, God had to take my idols, had to take away my career that was an idol. I had to lose my father, my biological father, so that I could understand the purpose. And sometimes we take that, okay, because God loves us, the winning mentality is that he asks to add. That is our math. But sometimes God is like, nope, how about subtractions? That is the winning mentality. And so we have to switch that perspective. It's like, okay, if God is taking away something, it's because either I'm being sinful or I'm being bad. No, God is actually the Alpha and the Omega. He understands the end. And so he has to subtract stuff for you to have that quote unquote winning mentality.
Exactly.
I love what you're saying, and all of you, because it reminds me of the scripture where Jesus said, whoever loses his life for my sake will gain it.
Yeah.
And I think as Christians, it's so important that we go to God and ask him in the different spheres of my life, like you mentioned marriage, you mentioned your mind, right? We're thinking about our heart, and the different spheres, whether it's career, whether it's our church life, whether it's our ministry life. Jesus, would you show us what it means to win? And we can't win without knowing the maker and what he says. And I think that the beautiful thing is, in a relationship with Jesus, it's a two-way street. It's not just us telling him what we want. These are my dreams, Jesus. But it's also taking time to be still and ask him, what does winning look like to you? And I think that when we as Christians learn to surrender, we learn to win. When we surrender our lives to him, and when we surrender our dreams and allow him, through the power of the Holy Spirit, to co-create with us, to co-dream. I'm a copywriter and a marketer in my professional life, but I always ask God, would you co-create with me, show me? And winning means when I partner with God and create with him and then use it to do good. And I think that we as Christians can't learn to win on stage and in public until we learn to win in private. And winning in private means surrender. It means forgiving those who hurt you, praying for those who persecute you. And because you mentioned share a personal story, I remember a time in my career where I was put in a position with a boss that it was just a very corrupt environment with employees that were backbiting, and a boss that did not have the skill of praising or recognizing hard work. But I had to learn, what does winning look like as a Christian? And winning through that very dark season meant getting on my knees, surrendering my idols, which was, I love praise and recognition, and surrendering it and saying, you know what, the audience of one, winning for the audience of one is enough, and allowing him to change me. And what's so amazing about who God is after a very dark trial there, and it was a long 2 years where I died every day, and prayed for my enemies and blessed, and then still did excellent, is that at the end of those 2 years, I no longer needed the praise. I remember going into a meeting with my boss, and I succeeded. I was excellent by the grace of God. He gave me everything I needed to be excellent in my position. On paper, I had every box checked. I did not get the recognition, but I had died to that human need for recognition. And I know that on the inside, the Jesus in me was resurrecting. And I was rising up as a daughter of the King of Kings that's looking for my Father's approval. And so I think that in each season of life, winning looks differently.
I hope y'all want me to follow that. My goodness. I mean, if there's one common theme I heard from each of y'all, it's that winning sometimes looks like losing. And we have to be okay when it comes to, as a believer, or even if you're not a believer, sometimes there's the business idea, right? You have to give in order to get back. You have to, just like with investing. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Just like with investing, you have to be willing to put something in first to then potentially receive a fruit from it. And that's the same idea of, I have to lose something first to then have the room to be able to receive back. And right to what you said, that the math in today's world is winning is just continuing to be added to you. And something I've been learning about in my own time, like in my own prayer time, like going through different scriptures and Psalms and Proverbs, is, you know what? like David in Psalms was talking a lot about the hate he was receiving, the persecution he was receiving, the people that were chasing him, the people that were trying to kill him. And something that God kind of tweaked in my mind was, we look at David as King David, as the guy who was one of the most prosperous people to live, like had a heart, a man after God's own heart. The thing I never really thought about was, that cat must have been scared out of his mind in Psalms. It must have been like he was about to lose his life, literally, ultimately have the loss. But as we learned from Paul, for to live is Christ and to die is gain, the whole perspective had to shift for me on, you know what? Even if I feel like I'm losing in physical here, that only means I'm gaining in the spiritual. Because I'm not going to be attacked physically if I'm not making any difference. Whatever, mercy. I mean, if just like any sport you watch, if you're not in the offensive zone, the team ain't going to do anything to you.
Yeah.
You ain't threatening them. But the moment that we start making the enemy a threat, the moment that we start really showing him, hey, you got to go down, he rallies his generals, he rallies his lieutenants, he rallies every army he can to say, there's your target, go take him out. And that's when Paul says, to live is Christ, but to die is gain. There's no such thing as losing as a Christian, because the winning, you get to experience a physical win. You get to experience a spiritual win. But even physical losing is still a spiritual win. So there literally is no losing. Even though it feels like it, a win's a win, but so is a loss. There literally is a win-win.
Yeah, so a question I have is, because we talked about surrender as a way of really winning mentality, right? I would love to hear like y'all's perspective on what surrender looks like. I think you have a beautiful story on what it looks like for you, but I would love to hear from you guys, your story of surrender, like what it looked like to really give it up. Because we talked about that. We just had a conversation in Starbucks where I got to know him pretty well.
Just about 2 hours.
Yeah, we got 2 hours, but I really loved your story of what you talked about as far as what you had to surrender to God and where God has led you now. So I would love for you to talk about that a little bit more.
So, background, came from Miami, and
Closer to you. Yeah.
God had, well, not God, but God had definitely a plan in my life. I grew up in a Christian household. I knew the Bible, but I had a religion instead of a relationship with God. I knew the Bible, I knew the verses. I knew Psalms 23 from the back of my head, and I was going into college, and the career that I chose was to become a doctor, because you're a pharmacist. I wanted to become a doctor, and that was my plan A and plan A only. I had no plan B. I was going to become a doctor no matter what. And in that aspect, I was giving excuses. I have to study. I got to go to the library. I have to do this and have to do that. And I wasn't spending time with God. I was not reading my word. I was not praying. I was not doing it. And so I was shifting away from God and putting myself more into the career. And, but when it came to like, oh, let's go out. Oh yeah, I got time to go out. And so God was letting me know that this career was an idol. And I didn't want it. I didn't want to know that was an idol. It was in my heart's desire to be a doctor. I was like, God. And I was not praying for it. It's your will, God. No, this is my will. Yeah. I'm going to become a doctor. You better say yes. You better say yes to this. I want you to say yes to this. And sometimes as a Christian, we want that. Yeah. We want God to say yes to our ideas and our thoughts. And God is like, have you asked me if that is my will? And so I continued on, and until 2020, when the pandemic came and I unfortunately lost my father due to COVID, that suffering and pain that I went through, and I had to surrender myself to God in that moment because I didn't know what to do. I've never gone through a loss of a loved one. And so surrendering my life to God meant I also had to surrender everything. You can't just surrender some parts if you want the whole will of God. It's like, oh yeah, God, you can have this, but not this. And so me going into that prayer saying, God, I surrender all, and then all. And so God said, oh, you really want to give it all? Your career. And I was like, really, God? Are you sure? My career? But I'm going to do good. I mean, I'm gonna be a doctor, heal people. Aren't you in the business of healing? Like I want to be in that business too with you and co-partner. Yeah, okay, sure. That is an idol in your life. And I was like, I don't think it's an idol. It is. Are you giving time to me? No, I'm busy. So that goes above me. Are you doing things for the kingdom? No, that's above me. So it is an idol. Give it up. And giving up that idol is hard because the enemy wants you to keep that idol. He wants you to stay in that. And God is saying, you know what? If you keep on longer in that route, you're going to lose yourself. Why gain the world? Right? And fully surrender to that is like a roller coaster. It is. Living the Christian life is like a roller coaster. When you are no longer holding on to the bar and you just surrender, and it's like, okay, I'm coming down and up, but it's a fun ride when you fully surrender. Because when you finish a roller coaster, you're like, if you love roller coaster, you're like, I'm gonna ride that again. Yes. Because you fully surrender yourself. You fully gave up everything that you were holding on, and sometimes holding on to something could hurt you even more. And so God is saying, let that go. Surrender. I got something better for you. Do you think that it, and I remember if you guys have seen that meme was like there's Jesus and the little girls, like the bear is like, I don't want to surrender this bear that's all beat up. And you see Jesus with a brand new bear. It's like, if you only knew to surrender what I have next for your life. And surrendering my career, he has now used me in ministry, and is like seeing what God could do through that surrender is like, that's beautiful, because I thought I had a purpose, but actually, I don't know if I would have. If you hear many stats, doctors are anxious, depressed, suicidal.
Oh, I know.
And you know, and so God was like, here, don't go that route. Come this way, and you will see how this fulfills you. So that surrender is hard, but once you do it, it's beautiful.
I hear you.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think that's amazing, dude. That's like you placed it perfectly. In my life, is not a very similar, but usually all the things with surrendering kind of seem very similar. For me, it was my business. I remember when I was learning how to like really understand God's voice, I started journaling. And one day I remember I was in a hotel room in Tennessee by myself, and I was looking outside of the window, and I was like, God, I'm gonna give you these 15 minutes that I got. All right, speak through me. So I just started writing all my thoughts, and the first thing that just started making sense, and he was just speaking to me and encouraging me. And I remember I was like, all right, God, like, what is it that you want to tell me? At that moment, the first thing is always like he puts it nice. He's like, yes, you're my son, my warrior, like all these things that he's about to like hammer you, right? And the first thing he said was like, you need to let go. Oh, let go of what? He's like, the business. He's like, whenever it's in your hands, he's like, you tend to manipulate, right? You tend to make it for your own good, for your own pleasures. And again, he was telling me, he was reaffirming, he's like, this is part of your nature when you have your hands on something. He's like, but my hands is pure, it's goodness. He's like, you think surrendering is like, oh, because you don't know. Is it not knowing that hurts us? He's like, but if it's in my hands and you truly believe that I have everything planned out for you for your good, he's like, that's the faith that you have to have, and that everything is going to turn around for your good. But you have to put it in my hands, let go. But he's like, if you tend to do anything in your power, I have to take my hands off. He's like, I remember that day, it was so hurting. I was in this hotel room, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm already here. I have to go down to the conference. Like, I have to go down there. You know, I can't just leave right now. I remember I was like, God, all right, fine, it's yours. It's your business. Right? I remember I was saying that, I was repeating it. And I went downstairs, and this first thing this lady asked me was like, how's your business doing? And I was like, it's not my business, it's God's business. I remember that. The first thing that I said, I walked away. And I remember 3 weeks later, the confirmation came. This lady messaged me on Instagram. And she was like, whatever you just told me there, that is God's business, that spoke to me. She's like, I've learned to surrender my business to him, and it has been prospering.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, thank you, God, for the confirmation, but it still hurts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, but he will confirm things to you when you surrender it, and that will be his will. And it hurts, it hurts because we've learned to put this label on our heart, like it's part of us, right? This life, this relationship, this business, this title is part of us. It's part of my identity, right? No, he's like, it's not part of your identity. Your identity is what I call you. You're my side, right? So that's huge. That's part of my surrendering too.
Gosh, I mean, yeah, it's what have I had to surrender? Well, I mean, I've got my wife right behind the camera over here. And I'm like, what have I not had to surrender?
Your idea of a relationship.
Yeah, we'll go down that road. I had to. We're
Perfect, too straightforward.
we're 6 years into marriage.
Well, you
now.
don't know? I'll throw
Okay,
it.
don't you worry. I know.
It was more so I knew what was going on. I wanted to pick the right one, but I guess we're going with this one. So 6 years into marriage now, 2 kids into marriage, and enough of a fun, wild roller coaster. For me, it's something I think we and I talked about this like last week. The way that I described how we have our life now was that she was getting in a relationship with her was the catalyst to the rest of my calling being started. And that came because I had to surrender what I thought the relationship I wanted. Because for anyone who knows our story, I didn't want to date her. She didn't want to date me. We basically bit at each other the first month and just tried to get rid of things. And I insulted her. She insulted me. It was a beautiful picture. At the end of but what it came down to was about a month in, I went by her place and I was prepared. I was basically, from a conversation we had earlier that day by phone call, I was preparing to break up the relationship. I didn't want to do it. I just couldn't shake the feeling. It just felt weird. It felt off. She basically made the point of if we do break up, like I don't date exes, we're not getting back together. I was like, well, I don't like that option either. Crap. Okay. So I had to really think this through, and I probably sat in her apartment and on the floor with her, probably for about 45 minutes and just cried because I didn't know what to do. And the whole time, the clear divide I could feel was what my mind thought to be true versus what the Spirit was telling me to trust. And in such clarity, I knew, God, I know you're telling me to pursue this, but I don't want to be wrong. I know you're telling me to pursue this, but this doesn't feel right. I know you're telling me what to do, but nothing about this fits what I had in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything was focused on what I was thinking was going to take place, and the peace finally came when the Spirit gave me the thought of, would you rather I be right or you be wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'd rather you be right. So okay, if I am the source of truth, I'm automatically right. So it gave me the courage to step into the relationship. 1 year in, proposed. Then 9 months later, got married. But it's been a learning of if you're talking like hot to cold, black to white, like if you're thinking like extreme opposites, like God said versus sin from the east from the west, like we're polar opposites in every way, which has been really unique because it's allowed for me to have to surrender. Because I know if I have a default for this, I know for a fact she's going to think the opposite. I know for a fact. If I want to go to do this today, she's going to say the opposite. If I am learning this, she's learning the opposite. And it's become a learning of this whole dating idea of, yeah, it's like I found the female version of me. It's like, yeah, we have so many things in common. Yeah, how high is the divorce rate now, by the way?
Jeez.
Like, I'm not saying that that's every relationship. What I am saying is the more you find someone who's like you, the less they can help you. Because if you're blind to your own weaknesses and they're like you, they're blind to your weaknesses. So both y'all are blind to both those weaknesses, which means y'all are gonna make it. And what I had to learn was, in the end, as much as the growth, the tough conversations, the crying nights, the louder conversations, because we've never once had a heavy argument. We've made the decision to never have an argument. But when we know things are getting louder, we know to step away. What we've learned is when we have the urge to get louder, pause and step away. Because there's something inside of you that's getting burned right now, and right now you just don't like the packaging it came in. The gift itself is what you want, is what you need and what you're wanting. You just didn't like the package.
Yeah.
And what we had to learn is, okay, you're saying that there's truth to what you're saying. And we've had to learn to erase or remove the emotion from the conversation, because truth is truth, no matter how you like it or not. But if we remove the emotion, just look at the content of the conversation, it's a super productive conversation, super fruitful conversation. It's just the fact that our pride gets in the way, our feelings get in the way, our emotions get in the way, and all of a sudden it turns into this big wildfire that didn't even have that came from a little spark of just, hey, just let's burn this little twig off. Let's just trim this edge right here. And you got unhappy, waved it all over, you got so crazy frantic, now you got a wildfire all over you. Simply because you weren't willing to step back, or in the case we weren't willing to step back and just say, okay, this isn't what I had in mind. But if it's not what I had in mind, and me doing this honors that person, clearly something's wrong inside of me. Because if what you're saying is true, and I feel I'm in the wrong, clearly I'm in the wrong. So it's a problem I have to outgrow, not one I have to fix you in. Because so many situations we've had where she's taught me, I'm a natural fixer. I will want to fix every situation, every scenario, bring the solution right to the table. I've had to learn to grow into emotional intelligence because I am so freaking logical that I actually ignore emotion in a conversation. If it's a tough one, let's get boom, 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 cool, move on. Let's keep the day going.
So what you're saying is there's been a lot of growth in marriage from the last 6
Oh,
years.
Oh yeah, I feel like I've been in the weight room 6 hours a day.
Amen.
But the cool thing about that is people. I'm trying. But the cool thing is, we've gotten to see God bless our marriage in ways that we had prayed for but had to walk through. And the marriage we have now, we look back now, and still to this day, and say, look, some days are really hard. And she'll say the same, like, some days I'm impossible. Some days she is impossible. Hey, guess what? I told her this actually 2 days ago. Or was it yesterday? That no matter how difficult the day was, I love being married to you because tomorrow I get a redo. Because we're committed to each other. We believe, from a Christian marriage, we're committed to each other. So I'm sorry for how I acted today. I'm sorry for the mistakes I made today. I'm going to try to do better tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to redo. You enter the new day with a clean slate. Because
Wife is looking at me right now.
well, because one, it teaches forgiveness, which can be difficult sometimes. It teaches grace because God looks at us the same way every single day. Says, hey, it doesn't matter how much you messed up, I still love you. Tomorrow's a new day. Let's try again. And yet, for some reason, I come from a background of marking up the tallies of how good you did today, how bad you did today. That's how I'm going to, based on how you act, that's how I'm going to treat you. Versus, I'm going to treat you with love regardless. And before I try to tell you what you're doing wrong, I want to figure out what I can do better. How can I step in to help us even avoid being in this situation?
That's interesting because I think I did have another question because as Christians, because it's part of what you said up. As Christians, we talked about what you just brought up how what surrender looks like, and I love your story of what that looks like as well. I feel as though as Christians, so to go back on my story a little bit. I when I gave my life to Christ, I felt like I surrendered everything, right? Then I realized that being a Christian is a lifelong journey of surrendering things every day. I would say dying to self, right?
Peel back the onion.
And a lot of times it's much easier to surrender some things versus others, as the Lord has shown me. I knew that there was a guy in my pharmacy school who was a pastor, but he would come for every test day and pray. He was a student there, and he would have his Bible study, right? And so I would talk to him a lot. And one of the things he told me was, with Christians, it's easy to be like, yeah, God, I surrender everything. Okay, cool. But what about that thing in that corner? See that black stuff in that corner? I want that too. It's like if you tell me your life is my home, see that dirty little spot back there. I need that. Give me that. It's like, do you need it today? Like,
You sure
you
about
know what I'm
that?
saying? It's like, hold on. Like, let me just, like, he's like, yeah, look, okay, you can hold on to it, but until you give me that, it's going to be, so for me, I guess I want to ask you guys, just like, just in general, like, what do you think is hard for Christians to truly surrender sometimes? You know what I'm saying? Because I feel, especially in America, it's difficult sometimes to really give your heart to Christ. Because as we talked about before, for some Christians, I feel like there's a lot of fear because you're worried about, quote unquote, making a mistake, like as if God didn't already take your mistakes into accountability when He gave you this plan. There's a fear of losing your whatever standing you felt you had, and it not being enough, as if God will give you informed enough anyways. And we know these things in our minds, because a lot of, obviously, if you're a Christian, you believe in God, you read the Bible, you understand what He's giving you. But sometimes I feel as though, as Christians, it's hard to gain that perspective at times because of that mindset of worship giving up. So I would like to ask you guys, like, what is it that you feel is difficult sometimes for Christians to really get out of that mindset? If you don't know.
I think number one thing that Christians hard to give up and surrender is their pride. And it's the root of all evil. And I think because of pride, obviously, we don't want to give up a position. We don't want to give up a CEO title. We don't want to give up our pastor title. We don't want to give up because it's the pride in us. It's like, no, God, this is what I want. This is truthfully what I want, and it's the prideful nature that God is saying, give that up. Give that up to me. Be humble. We don't want to be humbled. We do not want to be humbled. And God is saying, you have to be humbled into. That's why He said, I did not come to be served, but serve others. How is the Son of the God of the universe of all saying, now you're going to serve me? How is that human? Like that, there's no pride in that. There is no pride. Cleaning, the washing of the feet. I would not wash many people's feet. I'm sorry. But God is like, really? That's pride. Give that up.
Yeah.
Give that up. Oh, your career? You want the Dr. MD in your last name? Give that up.
He's like, I made doctor. He's like, like you, I was the best doctor, sir.
Okay.
I know what yeah.
And so pride is one of those things that I feel like that is the hardest thing that Christians
Yes.
don't want to give or surrender.
That's so true. Because I was going to lead into like that also leads to lack of understanding. Because most people in churches with the pride, they tend to make their own Jesus to fit their lifestyle instead of like actually letting go of everything to understand what God has for you, the lifestyle He already built and ordained before the foundations of the earth. They're like, no, He's going to fit into my life. Like they're saying, like, no, like I'm going to be a doctor, like make it work, right? Make it work like a genie in the bottle type thing. Like, I understand that you do miracle signs and wonders. Do that in my life with this thing. He's like, no, I have so much more for you.
I mean, to what you're saying though, too, and I want to be careful how I say this, but I think a lot of it too comes down to what we were ingrained growing up, because how many parents per se have you heard discipline kids and just say, because I said so? Everyone. But yes, you should be respecting and honoring your parents, but there's no teaching behind the why to be obedient. There's no teaching behind, like, well, this isn't about you, or we have to share too. Yeah, all these phrases are great, but there's great teaching on the idea. There's not a lot of great teaching on the foundation. And a lot of, when it comes to discussing pride, I mean, correct me wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm right, but I could be wrong. Pretty sure I'm right. But we're the most prideful country that exists because of all that we have. I mean, AC, actual covers on houses, not tin roofs, not missing a roof.
Get a car.
Like cars that work.
We have a house for our car.
Is that we have houses for our cars? Like, not to say, those aren't negative things, but when we get so focused on what we have and wanting more, we forget that God doesn't bless us to enjoy our life. He blesses us so we can be vessel for others. And the thing that this culture we have in society is focused on parents teaching their kids, pursue what you need, pursue what you want, pursue what you desire. It's all about I. I. Ironically, that's also the middle letter of the word pride. Because I is the center of pride, literally.
Bars.
And
Repeat that again.
so the reason at the end of the day we wonder why pride is such a big issue is because the focus of pride is ourselves, and we are literally at the center of pride, the letter I. It's literally the middle, it's the center of the word pride. It's ingrained into that. Why was the enemy thrown out of heaven? Pride. Pride came before the fall. Pride came before the fall of man. We want to know all things. We ate from the tree. Oh, that messed us up pretty good. Now we had an eternal condition called sin. Literally everything going on comes down to us having something of pride in us. The problem is we're never going to see change in our life until we're willing to do the introspection to see where we're being prideful. And the problem is most of us grew up in homes where there was not heavy disciplining involved, or you were told to pursue your heart, pursue what you want. Well, it's all about you. Like I'm not saying every household is that way, but there's plenty of families that claim Christianity that pursue their own agendas, and so their kids learn Christianity is about God blessing my life. But what they don't learn is, son, we're pursuing these things because we want to be able to do these things for the kingdom of God. And here's a couple ways how we're hoping to accomplish that. They don't teach the kids on stewardship, on being a vessel. We teach how do I get my the gas in my car filled, versus how do I get my car filled to use it to help somebody else. How do I make sure my car is what it needs to get me to my destination? Rather than, hey, I have gas in my car. I know someone needed a ride somewhere. Let me see if I can help them out too. Everything is on. This is about my schedule. I'm busy. I've got too much going on. We have such a busy life right now. I'm sorry we haven't talked to you in like 6 months. We've just been so busy. And I think we talked about this earlier. I don't believe in being busy. I just believe in being disorganized.
Oh yeah,
Your life is just disorganized because everything's on what you think you should be doing rather than what God's called you to do. And I'm happy to take any flack for that anyone wants to give me. But there's no place in the Word where God says, I'll create you your path. He says, I will be your guide on the path I have for you. But until we learn that part of surrender, as we've been talking about, we really won't understand what true victory is, because we'll be walking in our version of victory rather than the victory God wants to give us, but that we aren't prepared to receive yet.
Yeah, I love everything you guys are saying, and also I would add that another area that I think we as Christians find hard to surrender is our plans and our dreams. And I think of the scripture in Jeremiah 29:11-13 that says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you hope and a future." And we think that our plans are where it's at, but the problem is that our plans are so small compared to an infinite God who sees the end from the beginning and the impact, the ripple our work will do thousands of years after we're here. And in my journey, I've had to learn to surrender dream after dream after dream, because God has shown me that winning is not my definition, it's His. And winning is having Him in the center. Winning is me surrendering my life and living the journey. And I think that's what should make us different as Christians, is that we think that winning is getting the plaque or the check mark or the medal or a standing ovation, but really God is after the win of daily walking with Jesus. And He said if we would abide in Him, we would bear fruit that remains. And I think that the reason why we have to surrender our plans is because we want to do the plan without him. We want to run after those things, but he wants to be that intimate part. And his plans are just so great that we just can't even fathom. Like it says, greater than you can ask or imagine what he has prepared. And it's funny to kind of, the opposite of your story is mine, where when I became a Christian, I was set to become a missionary. And I went to school not only with my degree in teaching, but I went to school to be a missionary, raised a full-time salary to go out, and I was going to go all over the nation starting Christian clubs and schools. And once I raised my money and I started doing that as a missionary, God said, I want you to surrender that and go into the classroom.
Interesting.
Why would he do that? Why would you do that to me, Lord? Those were, and it really, I had to surrender my pride, my religious pride, the pride that a holy calling is ministry. And really the call that's holy is the bended knee in the quiet place where I surrender my idea of how you want to use me. So you want me in the classroom? Then the classroom is my mission field. And it's amazing the miracles God did in the classroom. He put me in positions that I didn't even think to ask for, but positions came to me where I got to write curriculum in the public schools that were rooted in Christian principles and values, and that was like had God's favor, and it got out there. And then years later, it's funny how our dreams sometimes actually have this seed of God's plan. So I wanted full-time ministry, right? But the plan was where I had my hand on it. So I had to surrender my plan thinking, oh, he's not calling me into ministry, but actually what he showed me in the journey, he did call me to full-time ministry, but my full-time ministry was teaching. And then my full-time ministry was a business. And then years later with my husband, because it's amazing how God puts you together with when you're praying for the right partner and you're waiting for I had to say no to other options for a spouse and surrender again to wait for God's best. And God's best for me, my husband, we've been married almost 20 years.
Amen.
And in the intersection of both of he was in youth ministry too, but working. And then in a dream happened one day, just following God, just doing a Bible study as a married couple, was birthed what became a nonprofit and a ministry called Epic at Work, where we actually host conferences and workshops for entrepreneurs. And it's all about exactly what you said, where you were in your hotel room and you said, Jesus, my business belongs to you. That's what we go and empower Christians in the workplace to do, to say, hey, your workplace is holy. Have you dedicated it to God? And imagine what you could accomplish if you invite Jesus into your business strategy, and ask him to use your business to do good and to bring value to your cities, to bring transformation, asking God for those ideas. And then we're doing that with the youth as well, with Next Gen CEO, which is amazing how I thought at the beginning of a dream that I was going to go around the nation and do it as a full-time minister, but instead I'm doing it as a teacher. And it just came back. So with every dream, the death of a dream is the resurrection in Christ. And to me, that was the greatest surrender, not just in pride, but also my fear. Like the fear, surrendering my fears, like, well, what if I fail? What if I miss it? But one thing I've learned is that when you're walking with Christ daily, he will somehow, in spite of our many weaknesses, and the many times I missed it, and the many times that I just totally messed up, that he chooses the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. So at the end of the day, like I can look back and just give him all the glory, because I know that all these things that I accomplished, they weren't even my idea to begin with, and it certainly wasn't the way that I was going to do it, but he gets all the glory. And that to me is what brings the win, is when you're partnering with the master planner that said he's the one with the plan. So we have to surrender our plan and our way and know that the momentary loss, that it feels like I lost ministry, that was painful. Like I wanted to be a full-time minister. I saw it a certain way, but in those losses comes the plan of the Father for which he created you to do. What all those giftings that he put in me to be able to write a curriculum or to teach this way or to start a business, I didn't know, but he lined it all up. And so I just know that there's many people watching now that are thinking the same thing, like, man, I had this business fail, or this turn in my life, or the turn and the valley and the journey, but that's just a moment. The valleys are just a moment. God has a bigger perspective of our whole life, and if we're walking with Jesus, he will give us not just the winning day and the winning moment, the winning applause. He'll make our lives a win. He'll make our lives worth something to talk about on the other side of glory.
One thing I love that you guys highlighted was the mindset of the training you guys had prior to what God called you to, right? And how God decided that for some degree use some of it, but then the rest of it is like, nah, what you trained for has nothing to do with what I got for you. You got to trust me on this.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the hallmarks of the calling on God that he has for our lives is a lot of times God will ask us to do something that we have no way of doing on our own.
Yeah.
In other words, like, wasn't trained in it, didn't go to school for it,
Yeah.
didn't have an idea of what it would even look like. So we talk about like the cloudy vision sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, this is better than what I could have imagined. You know what I'm saying? And having that faith to take that first step and to trust, because Moses, Abraham, Gideon, all these people had questions even when they were trusting God in that regard too. So God wants a relationship. He's not going to expect you to always just blindly trust him in that regard, because he gives a lot of grace for that. But it's the idea of having that confidence to know, like, hey, God has a purpose for us that we could not earthly imagine.
Yeah.
It's just the truth of it. We cannot earthly imagine what he can do with us, little old me. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And trusting that sometimes, instead of getting our mindset of like the things of why it could go wrong, how could I even do something like that, is one of the, I think, things that we as Christians have to start getting our mindset of. For me, if you told me that on, what they say, 8/31/2024, if you told me 5 years ago this is what I'd be doing, if I'd be in North Carolina talking to you guys about these things, I probably would be like, no. If you told me 10 years ago this is what I'd be doing, I'd be like, and who's God again?
Yeah.
You don't know what God has in store for your entire life.
Yep.
And the beauty of it is there's no starting point or age where you have to begin, or where you have to start. You just start, you just do it. And that takes, like I said, a daily discipline of spending time with him, because you have to be able to hear what he has to say, and you're not going to be able to do it if you're not spending time with somebody. So I thank you guys, because this is really beautiful and motivating to let people know that God is not something that you have to plan out or prepare for. It's something that he is with you daily and is ready for you always. It's not something that you just wake up one day and it's like, okay, I got to make sure that I know 1,000 verses before I hit this age, or like I got to make sure that there's no qualification. Like, he qualifies for the ones he calls. And I think that's the beauty of it. So yeah, I thank you guys for your story. That was really beautiful.
I think even going back to like your story, and sometimes you gotta surrender your plans and what it looks like losing. I always had this, might not be like biblical, but I always see it like this. You have a chessboard, and it's not, I don't want to put it like life is a game, but Jesus has control of every piece. Then you have the opposite side, right? Trying to come in and take some moves. And in chess, you have to lose some pieces to advance. And as people, we look at the piece and we're stuck that we lost that piece. And God is saying, no, I had to remove that piece because I am advancing. And overall, I am God. And there is going to be a winning mentality. Checkmate. Let me handle that. But we get so stuck in that piece that was lost, and God is overseeing all the plan, and he goes, just focus on me. I will make the right moves, and we're going to win.
I love that because I just started this year learning chess.
Well,
Because I don't know, and when you start learning chess, there's this guy called Magnus, right? Magnus
Yeah.
Carlsen, right? He just like, yeah, God designed his brain in different ways. But one of his things that he was saying, he's like, you have to surrender your high pieces to win. Like that's the way he plays it. You see him play that he's actually surrendering his queen. Hold on, queen is like
Yeah.
the most
Yeah.
powerful piece on the board. He's like, but there's something behind it that I have planned.
Yeah.
You know, he always does that, and it's always like the opposition, the opponent. He's always thinking he's in the win, right? You know, it always looks on the board like he's about to lose, but he's not about to lose. And then it just even goes into more like it's amazing. There's one more move in every situation, and God knows that one more move that you don't see, right? And sometimes we make decisions and movements off of desperation or fear, and that causes us a big loss. You know,
Yeah.
so. It's beautiful. Thank you, man. That was definitely for me.
And scripturally, that would be the pruning. How you prune trees, fruits to be more fruitful, and that's what God is doing with us. Not everything that we lose is a loss. It's God pruning us to make us more fruitful.
So here's kind of one question we have to come in, kind of, I guess this can kind of be the closing remarks from the conversation. So the question that we had was, how did you take that first step in your complete life change, and what fear or fears did you have to overcome? What that first step? But there's obviously lots of different stages in advancing and growing, but what was one of those first fears that you had to overcome, and what was that first step that you took to overcome?
I think for me, the first fear that I would have would be my image, possibly. I think first fear sometimes is like, okay, I was living a life before, right? And now when I take this first step, it's like, okay, are people gonna be weird now? Like, am I still gonna be accepted to some degree? For me, personally, it was like, okay, I can't do this. Am I gonna be bored? Like, is it gonna be a boring life? Like, what are we gonna do? Like, when I come home now, do I not listen to music, or do I not, like, you know what I'm saying? And what's funny is, what God showed me was He's the person that created fun to begin with. You know, that, like, for me, what I found was that my life has been much. I tell people this, like, before I knew God, my life, I felt it was similar, but it was gray. And God brought a lot of color, like I walk through places now and I see things a lot different. I did not know them before. And it was weird because, like, you talk about pride, it was like I saw things in gray because I was always thinking about myself in every circumstance. Am I comfortable? Am I not comfortable? Did I eat? Did I not eat? You know what I'm saying? And you walk around. No, I mean, you just in general. Am I tired? You just walk around in life. It's like, man, my clothes look good. My shoes are all right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. Well, no, not that. I actually still consider that. But no, but like if you're walking through life, you're always thinking about those things. And now you walk through life, you start to look around a little bit more. You start to see things. You start to look at people differently. You walk around, you're like, oh man, does that person have what he needs? Oh man, I want to talk to that person. You build a lot of relationships that way. You realize, like, one, you're not alone at all. Like, the same fears and things you have, the same things that other people are going through as well. And they're just waiting for another person to let them know that they're not alone in it. That there is a Father that loves them much more than I or anybody else could. And he's waiting for that freedom as well. And it's a beautiful thing to see sometimes. For me, but going back to one of the things, that first step is getting past that image of what you think it is, of what you think a relationship looks like. That fear of just everything. Fear of losing, your whatever identity you put yourself in. Fear of losing your idols. Fear of losing this image of who you think you are, and trusting that this beautiful being has something more for you. So I think that's one of the things that helps people sometimes.
I had the fear that doing it God's way would not be fulfilling, wouldn't bring me joy. And what's amazing is that because He created us, doing what He asked us to do is where the fulfillment is at. And even I remember one time 10 years ago, sitting on the couch, and God spoke to me, and I was thinking in that moment about my dream, which was songwriting and I was getting music lessons and singing lessons, and I was thinking about that. And in that moment,
You
God
can
said,
Oh.
I love to sing.
Okay.
Sing. I love to sing.
Okay.
So, and in that moment, God asked me to do something totally different, and He said, "Will you take on this other thing?" And for a split second, you know, it was like if time was slow, I knew that I was going to say yes, because whatever God asked, the answer is yes. He knows better. But there was that moment of, oh, like, you know, like resistance, like, oh, I was just about to use my spare time to do my real passion. Well, I said yes, and He said to me in that moment, He said, because you've said yes to my dream, I'm saying yes to yours. Well, fast forward that next year, my first song made it into a documentary that went around the world. I got received in the mail a little note about its award. The next song, one that I put out there, made it into a Christian film that was in theaters in North Carolina. Then another song just made it that's in another film.
Yeah,
That's coming out this, really exciting, that's coming out this Thanksgiving. A new film coming out of my song. It's a Christmas song that'll be out there. But here's the thing, this is the point I want to make. Do you know that the joy that I have from that whole experience doesn't compare to the joy that I get doing as I've been obedient to build what God's asked me to build, which is Next Gen CEO, what I'm working on with my daughter, starting clubs. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but as I've said yes, it's become my greatest passion. And isn't it just amazing that the Creator isn't there saying, ha ha ha, you want to do this, but I'm going to make you do that, and there's your loss. No, He actually knows what's going to make us feel fulfilled. And I'm very grateful for singing and songwriting and how God has said yes to crazy yeses to my dreams. But there's no greater joy than walking in your purpose. And we don't know what our purpose is outside of the one that said, I have those plans. So that's why we have to just lay them down.
I would say for me, I think the greatest fear is coming to Christ. Is that surrender? Because I knew it was going to be uncomfortable, and I was very used to being comfortable and doing things my own way. I was super prideful, and I'm still working on that as well. God is still putting me on that season. But He's like we were saying this earlier today. Like when you're uncomfortable is when you're changing, it's when you're growing, and it's when you're becoming more like Christ. It's when you're in the furnace that you are developing. So it's definitely, that was the fear that I had. It's like I knew I was going to be uncomfortable, and I knew I was going to be prosecuted, and I knew it wasn't going to be in my liking. So that was the biggest fear that I had, for sure. And through my entire journey, like you're saying, it's a whole roller coaster when you look at it. But it's a beautiful roller coaster, and it's a beautiful ride if you learn just to surrender it all, right? Because the more that you hang on to certain things, the more they can hinder you. But God can still use that hurt that you're holding on to put you in a different level for the next season. Like He knows what's going to fulfill you, what you're saying. And like even to her, like I've been ministering to more people now in this season, and that has fulfilled me more with joy. Now I'm understanding the joy of the Lord. You know, when somebody told me that when I was going through a trial, he's like, you know, you can have access to the joy of the Lord. And I was like, yeah, I heard that 100,000, maybe 1,000,000 times, right? Because I didn't understand it. But when he told me, he's like, no, it's the joy of the Lord. It's not your joy. You can't manufacture this. The more they try to manufacture it, the more that it's not going to come. The more you're going to try to strive for it. He's like, it is His joy. How do you get it? You tap into His presence. How do you tap into His presence? You enter His courts with thanksgiving and praise. Right, when you do those things, you'll get the joy through the trial. When you minister to people and do His dream, right, which will fulfill you, and it's you'll sharpen each other, and it's just amazing the way to see that. Yeah.
I think for me, or what I feared the most was honestly stepping into that calling and knowing, is this actually the calling that You have for my life? Like, I'm scared because I don't think I'm called for this. You use a wreck like me to preach the gospel. Are you sure you picked the right person? I'm like Moses, I'm not qualified for this. And I think we put ourselves as the barrier, like God could do, he just needs you to be available. You don't have to be qualified. He actually does not want you to be qualified, because if you're qualified, you get the glory. If you're not qualified, that means God takes the glory. Because I'm not. I am not the best communicator. I struggle speaking sometimes.
I can't sing.
I cannot sing. And so God is saying, no, I just need you to be available in that fear of, am I called to do this? Is one of the fears that I have to overcome. And am I doing this right? And the word says, seek his will, and he will show you what path to take. So as long as you're seeking his will, he is going to show you the path to take. And this is the calling. And sometimes it could be, even the good things that you wanted to be a missionary could be bad sometimes. Because some people could be like, oh, I want to be a pastor for the wrong motives. And it even came with the Pharisees, right? The right thing could be wrong. And so God is saying, let me take that. Let me take control of it. Seek my will. And another verse. Seek his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added. God is what he wants you to do, is to seek him. He will do the rest. And so that fear of like, am I called to do this? Am I called to be a youth pastor? If this is what you want, do you want me to come to North Carolina? Is this your will? Like, I'm scared. And you have to take the step of faith and believe that what you're seeking his will is what he's taking you in that path. Yeah, that's my fear. Still conquering and trying to fear those, but that's when you have to press into the Lord. If he takes away some of these fears, you're like, okay, I could do it. I'm self-sufficient. I don't have to. It's like those fears could come in, and that's when you lean onto the Lord more. So God, I can't do this without you. Truthfully.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that the fear it's not about having fear, but it's where do you turn to when you have the fear?
Yeah.
Who do you turn to when you have the fear? Do you turn to yourself, or do you turn to the Lord and allow him to take that fear?
And to keep mine in brief here, because I know we're coming up on time, I would just say mine is very simple. As I'm discovering how deep my people pleasing have started, because there's a lot of words, there's a lot of things that God speaks to, obviously speaks to all of us, but specifically for me, there's a lot of things he's spoken to me that maybe are coming a decade or 2 decades down the line. And my fear is, how crazy am I going to sound? Like, how many visions that I communicate, how close am I to being sent into an insanity asylum for some of the things I feel like God's told me about, things that he's impressed on me. But what I'm learning is, one, there was a saying that was given me a while back, which was, if people weren't on the conference call with God, why should they have to know? And so that was a reminder for me to realize, okay, it doesn't matter if other people don't believe it, because in the end, it's not their job to fulfill it. It's God's job to fulfill it. If he gave it to me, that means that over time, he'll fulfill that good work in me, because he's the author and the finisher of my faith. And so I've had to learn over the course of time, even with the podcast, to realize, okay, the vision is cloudy. You know what? At some point, I want us to get to the clarity of some of the cleanest water in the world. Like some of the glaciers in Alaska, where you can see hundreds of feet down. Right now, it looks like the Amazon. You can't really see 2 inches in front of you. But over time, I've learned God will bring clarity to things, but you have to be willing, like you said, to take that first step and say, okay, I'm going to choose. There's nothing special. I'm going to choose to believe what you're saying and take a step towards what I believe that vision is that you've given me. I'm just going to take a step. No matter how ugly, how small, how big, no matter how uncoordinated, I'm going to take a step and just make that might happen. Let me just take a step. Okay, now take another step. Just like you learn how to walk. You didn't just come out of the womb walking. You had to learn to fall on your face, fall on the side, fall on your head. You had to fall until you got the muscles built up where you could walk. Same way with the vision is I've had to learn. Some people aren't going to get it, and some just aren't meant to get it. At the end of the day, the people that are meant to be a part of it fully get it. They sold out to it, and now we're starting to continue to see what that vision looks like. But it started was saying, okay, let's go cloudy. I'll take an inch. I'm just gonna take a step. And it just was a simple decision to take a step. So I know I got a ton of value from this conversation. Jasper, thank you for hanging out with us today. Laura, thank you for joining us again, and for the rest of the hosts for always being here consistently. Hope you all receive some value from this as well. And if you guys are physically going to be in Wendell next month, we'll be at Arise Coffee Cottage again for another one of the festivals, so we're hyped for that. For now, we'll see you guys next time, and feel free to reach out to us via YouTube, social media, anything. We'll be praying for you, be there for you, or if you've got topics you want us to touch on. Peace out, y'all.
Thank you.